Why Lewis Hamilton's career might be over soon. You can choose to love or hate him, but that certainly won't change the fact that Lewis Hamilton is one of the greatest drivers Formula One has ever seen. Statistically, Hamilton is the most successful driver in the history of Formula One, with 103 wins, 7 championships, 103 pole positions, and 183 podiums. And on top of that, with a total of 44 records, Hamilton holds virtually every record there is to have. But if there's anything we ought to learn from 2021, and especially the 2022 season, it is that things definitely won't remain the same for long. I mean, there was a time fans of Formula One thought Schumacher's dominance was never going to end, but then came Fernando Alonso, and things certainly didn't remain the same. And so, with a pretty challenging 2022 season, could Lewis Hamilton's career be coming to an end? Keep watching to find out. I know you already know who Lewis Hamilton is, but let's quickly run through his career in Formula One. Hamilton made a debut for McLaren alongside his then teammate Fernando Alonso, who already had 2 world championships. It was quite a debut season because the 22-year-old rookie grabbed 4 wins and missed out on the championship by only 1 point. Then in 2008, he made up for it by securing his first world title courtesy of the German racer Timo Glock, and Hamilton went on to be the youngest world champion the Formula One race had ever seen. But from then on, he never came truly close to winning the title with McLaren as the team struggled to match the performances of the likes of Red Bull and Ferrari. At this point, Hamilton decided to defect in 2013 to Mercedes, and this move stunned the F1 world. While some saw it as probably the greatest driver move in the history of the sport, others believed it didn't make sense, even as pundits had seen it coming after the then Mercedes team chief Ross Brawn paid a visit to the F1 star in his house alongside his team and sealed the deal over a cup of tea. Although Hamilton's former team members never criticized the move, Martin Whitmarsh of Aston Martin labeled it a mistake due to his faith and belief in the McLaren team to win in the future. And so, after a 2013 season with the team, Hamilton won the championship every season from 2014 to 2016, apart from 2016, when his teammate Nico Rosberg got the better of him. And then came arguably Hamilton's toughest fight of his career against the Red Bull's Max Verstappen last season. Fast forward to 2022, things are not looking too good for Mercedes. As of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, they stand second in the Constructors, but that's only because of Red Bull's double DNF at the Bahrain Grand Prix. With just 3 laps to go from second place, Max Verstappen slowed down and crawled into the pit lane. What happened was that his car suffered from a lack of fuel pressure. It had the necessary quantity of fuel, but the pumps couldn't deliver the fuel to the engine because a vacuum prevented it. Had it never happened, Mercedes would have been 49 points behind leaders Ferrari after only the second race. What is the major cause of Lewis's below-par performance this year? Is there a fundamental problem? Well, it's certainly not just one problem, but a combination of having rivals who continue to step up their game and Mercedes being particularly bad. However, their problems are mainly rooted in the lack of confidence the Formula One driver has in his car. F1 introduced fresh rules for 2022 with the aim of making racing more exciting and fun to watch. It's distinctly different from the previous regulations, and this means teams had to start afresh this season. And this is the reason for the catchphrase for F1 in 2022. Throughout the season, Mercedes has been suffering from a lot of porpoising. If at this point you ask exactly what porpoising is, you won't be wrong because even experienced F1 fans hardly understand what this means. Porpoising is the phenomenon F1 cars have begun to experience since the adoption of the ground effect philosophy. In this so-called new philosophy, the air going under the car sucks the car to the ground, so much so that the bottom of the car actually hits the surface of the track at a pretty high speed. And when it does that, all ground effect downforce is lost, and the car bounces up again, and this repeats over and over. The trouble with this is that the faster the pace, the further the car gets sucked to the ground, and if it manages to get too close, it can result in the stalling of airflow and subsequently drop the downforce created off a cliff, causing the car to spring upwards. And so the word porpoising is basically just a fancy word for bouncing. But come to think of it, even if Mercedes seems to be the hardest hit by this aerodynamic phenomenon, a bunch of other teams, including Ferrari, also seem to be dealing with porpoising. And so why isn't it affecting the performances of other teams? Well, Max Verstappen proposed a solution to the challenges faced by Mercedes resulting from porpoising. He believes raising the car's ride height could be the solution, but Lewis Hamilton seems to disagree. In reaction, Lewis said, "In previous races we raised the car and still it bounced. Porpoising deals with the flow structure at the bottom of the car," Lewis added. "And for the better part of the season, we run the car considerably high, and it wasn't until Barcelona we began reducing it. From our experiences in Monaco and Baku, we realized that it still bounces even when we decide to raise it, so we can't take it any higher," he said. But it seems their problems aren't just because of poor porpoising. It is also pretty evident that the Mercedes power unit isn't as strong as Ferrari's or Red Bull's. And this is shown mainly by the Mercedes power teams of Aston Martin and McLaren being much slower than, say, the Ferrari power teams of Haas and Alfa Romeo. But while winning the championship is pretty much out of the cards for Mercedes in 2022, I wouldn't write them off for returning to the top and winning races later in the season. But the thing with having a car performing below expectation at the start of new regulations shows that they will keep struggling for a title until the regulations change again. That's if they do sooner. But wait a second, if Mercedes is facing all these problems, then how is George Russell able to be in the top 5 in every race so far while Hamilton isn't up there? Well, you'll recall I mentioned that Hamilton had lost confidence in his ride, and if you've lost confidence in your car, it somehow makes you lose confidence in your driving. Maybe the car doesn't just suit Hamilton's driving style, but you need to understand that gaining confidence is all about the mind. Having examined all these, what is left for Hamilton? Well, it goes without saying that Hamilton will most likely not win the world title this year. And with all the issues Mercedes seems to be facing, I don't think he'll win in 2023 or 2024. Don't get me wrong, I'm trying to be realistic here. Not to mention, by the start of the 2023 season, Hamilton will be 38 years old, and you know age will pose a challenge. With all these, do I see Hamilton continuing in Formula One beyond 2022, or even 2022? Well, you tell me. But first of all, I don't see him jumping ship from Mercedes to another team. That's unlikely. But if he isn't winning races and gunning for his 8th title, do you see him bothering anymore? I mean, if Mercedes is unable to produce a car to ace championships, then that is one basis to leave. Also, it's pretty evident that everything that played out in Abu Dhabi had a negative impact on him and his passion for the game. And if he can't fight back from what transpired, it will be difficult for him to regain the solid motivation he once had. Well, for me, I feel Hamilton's performance is a lot below expectation, especially with what we've seen of him in the past. And recently, he seems to be struggling to find pace within himself. If you put yourself in his shoes, bearing in mind that the clock is ticking against you regarding your age, you may just lose hope in yourself. And when you lose hope, regaining it could be an uphill task. So, let's wrap this one up. Do you think Lewis Hamilton's career might be over soon? Are his glory days over? Will we ever see the Lewis Hamilton who is in the habit of breaking records continuously? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.